I can pray. Heavenly Father God, thank you so much for bringing us here together. Thank you, Lord, for teaching us about business and entrepreneurship. We pray, God, for inspired wisdom so that we understand how to use this and how to apply it for everybody's respective callings and industries you've inspired interest in for us all. Guide us, Lord, and thank you. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Fly on the wall. So we got to send this to. We got to send this to. Elaine and everyone. Entire screen. Share. All right. So last we were meeting on this, we're working on putting together a list of the various different, and I put links in our group if we want to share it to anyone. So in this last one, we put together a list of various different. Well, let's just kind of do a quick recap. So the idea is our goal is to figure out how we can generate money for an outpost. Thinking about, so our idea is to disconnect as much as we can from the network and just kind of think of like, how can we be like an entrepreneurship center inside of this, right? How can we actually be sustainable inside of a bigger bubble? So the way we can do that is think about external revenue sources, internal revenue sources, ones that are having to create something that was an additional amount of effort, and even better, thinking about ones that can be some of a byproduct of what we're already doing. So with that, let's go through kind of ones we were looking at. So a lot of these were focused on internally cooking classes, a lot of events, and Market Garden is kind of like a byproduct. Half of it's a byproduct, so we have to have that. Like imagine this is an outpost. Imagine that you have to grow your own food. Well, you might as well grow a little bit more. So that's why I put this one as kind of a byproduct. What's nice about doing things with quadrants is then we see where the empty quadrants are. And we think, okay, well, we've got a lot down here, not a lot over here. So that helps us, our minds, to be more balanced. And that's why a lot of times I like to do quadrants, is because then our mind is like, kind of, we almost focus it on, hey, let's think about more stuff over here. So I think the next big piece on this is to consider what, we have kind of, we have what we're thinking of here. The question is who each of these serve. And so this is where we are able to start honing this and refining this down. So when we have a lot of different ideas, we could look at this, we see some of these for elderly, some of these for parents, some of these for kids. And while it's okay to have like a really wide set of who we serve, understand that that ends up becoming a different marketing strategy for each group. And so would be a good idea to consider, which class do we want to reach the most? And this is something that happens like with a lot of new businesses. We think, okay, let's form a business. Who do you want to serve? Everybody. I want everyone to be my customer. And it seems good because if everyone's your customer, then you have access to like everybody in the world. But how do you reach everybody in the world? And how do you service everyone in the world? And so what we find is that the more focused we are, the smaller our target audience is, the easier it is to market them. Does that resonate so far? Mm-hmm. So what I'd like us to do is actually go through and maybe kind of double check this or test this against what we feel our true target audience is. And to do that, what I want to walk us through is this idea of personas. Have we heard this concept before? Personas. So a persona is essentially a kind of a group of people. Now I'm going to bring up an old course of mine just to kind of give a sense in some things here. So when we think about this, the idea is called market segmentation. So our goal in this is to be able to kind of divide our market and have more clarity on who it is that we're actually trying to reach. So segmentation means segmenting. Our market means who our potential customers are. So in that, this idea that there, a lot of times, like if we're trying to market to everybody, it becomes sometimes confusing because they're in different stages. And so that's what I want us to be thinking about is it becomes easier to market if we know exactly who we're marketing to. And that's this idea of kind of dividing people up into different buckets. So if we divide people in different buckets, we're able then to be able to say a message that maybe resonates more specifically with them. This is really pretty obvious stuff so far, yeah? So this is this idea that there's maybe businessmen and doctors and mechanics and students or whatever it is. We get this concept that if we divide them up and understand who they are, but that would be a demographic. And so is this concept that a demographic is one way to divide people, but it's not actually the best. Unless you provide a product for doctors, right? If we're providing, going back to our list, an event, right? We don't want to just target doctors, right? We want to target anybody who would be interested in an event. And that leads us more into psychographics. So we could start with geographic, meaning that we only want to target people who are within a radius of Paradise Fields. And we don't want to be targeting people on the other side of the world because that effort would be worthless. Obvious stuff, right? It's obvious but when we say it, it becomes more obvious. So the geographic would be one thing we're going to target. So when we're talking about who is our target customer, we're going to say people within Hamilton, Newmarket, whatever it is. Demographic, well, if we are targeting, with Charday, with the idea of the juices, or with the children, right? So we would say, okay, I'm targeting parents because the parents have to bring the children. So actually, you're actually targeting the parents, not the children. And there's an interesting, we're going to get into that in a second, the difference between a buyer persona and a user persona. A buyer. So who's buying? So even though you're going to serve the kid, you're actually marketing to the parents. More specifically, you're probably marketing to the mom. So that's how we were able to say, okay, we do have a demographic. The demographic is, 24 to, 45-year-old, female within the Newmarket. So all of a sudden, if we've really narrowed down our target of who we're actually trying to serve, it gives us more clarity, because I'm going to be able to give a very, very different marketing message to, a mother than I would be giving to just, hey, everybody, right? So we're going to kind of also talk about psychographic and behavioral, but we'll start here. So geographic we get, but also understand it's also language. So it's country, language, customs, culture. Region can also be targeted around weather items, right? So it can even be regional with that, but demographics, pretty straightforward, age, sex, gender, that kind of thing, nationality, profession, job function, things that we can see there. Psychographic is where it gets interesting. And this is where I really think we need to be focusing. I think I was doing, I forget who it was I was working with yesterday, and I kept asking I know it must have been Charday. And it was what do you actually, what do they want from this? And that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit, is we want to get into psychographics behind why they want to bring their kids here. What is it they're doing? Because we don't want to be a commodity product. We talked before about the brand hierarchy. Right? So we're going to think about interests, personalities, values, beliefs, lifestyles. We want to figure out what ultimately their motivation is, because we can understand their motivation. That allows us to better provide a solution that caters to that motivation. And that's kind of another level there. And then there's also behavior online and offline. We're not going to get into that so much in this course. So a customer persona, again, is just a way to kind of put a name on a group of people. So there's different types of personas, a buyer and a user persona. And so I'm going to skip over some of this stuff because it's not useful to us right now. But a buyer persona is going to be the parent. So in our mind, we're going to think, okay, I'm going to target a parent and really start thinking about what the messaging is that I want to say to that parent. Even though I'm marketing to them, I actually may be designing the program not for the parents. So we're designing the program for the kids, but we're marketing to the parents. So that's this concept of splitting between the two different personas. So one's the buyer, you're dividing a toy. The other is who's going to use the toy. So we're going to move through some of these stuff here. So this is what we're going to be focusing mostly right now on marketing personas. But as we also then start to craft the program, that's when we'll focus on design personas. In a marketing persona, we're going to be looking at basic demographic information. So that's age, income. Then we're going to get into psychographic information. What is their goal? So let's make this practical. Let's go back in our minds to one of the, and we're going to pick just one for now of the items. Is there one that's the strongest in here that we want to start with? Just so when we're doing these exercises, it's not like completely theoretical.
The strongest?
Yeah, what would we say is the one that's like, we've all talked about this, and this is the one we really think we should be doing? You know, we have events is kind of a, you know, because a movie night, a cooking class, that's an event. Whether it's a day camp or whether it's a, you know, that kind of things, or we can straight go into a product. And by the way, there's typically three main pieces. There's product, events, and like, product is service and like a cause. So we can see the flowers would be a product, but if you're adding this into a memorial service at the location, now it's a service with a product, right? And so it becomes nice to be able to, hey, good morning. It would be nice to be able to think through that as well. Is there something specific we want to target in this?
What?
I feel like we've heard a lot about the day camp type stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if we agreed, but I felt like everybody could do something in the day camp. Agriculture, natural remedies, working with kids. So in my brain, I was trying to think of something that involved all four.
Okay.
But was that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so we're gonna press with the day camp.
Yes.
So our examples will be with that. So when we're thinking of this, we're gonna say, okay, what is the goal of the mom to send their kids to the day camp? And so if we want to start taking some notes, and you can localize this to your idea, because I know we all have different flavors of what this looks like, right? One is the day camp, the other is the weekend events, right? So if we can just take some notes, and we're going to really be thinking through the motivations. So what are the motivations on why somebody would want to send their kid to a day camp? Okay, so to get them out of the house, is the question would be, are they, would then if that's the case, they have to be even in a smaller geographic persona, right? Because if they're going to just like, hey, I just want them out of the house for the day, you know, or every week, whatever it is, then they have to be within probably 5 or 10, 15 minutes. Versus if they're coming in for a weekend, it could be within an hour, 2 hours even. So that motivation, do you see how this, it's all connected, guys, right? So the motivation that you're targeting ultimately informs the geographic persona that we're also targeting.
Some people want an alternative thing for their child to do.
Yeah. So exposureships.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was the reason why this idea came up was I met with a patient from OET and her friend. I started talking about some things, and her name was Christina, and she said, "I would love it if our kids could learn something outside of Christian values."
Yes.
Like they wanted something. They were like, we want to learn Christian values, but not in a where they're sitting down
Yes.
on the desk. And we were like, so that was really reassuring. And that's what set this whole thing off was her. Yeah. So that was the one main thing. So like, I guess she's just asking for true education.
Sure.
That's what she's asking for.
So why don't we then start filling out some kind of initial personas? So let's start having different motivations. So one is an activity for the child for an exposureship. We'll start with that one there. Okay. So this is going to be Exposure Emily. So her name is going to be Emily, her mom. And she wants exposure for her children, right? That's opportunity. Okay. What is, let's kind of continue. Let's take this further here. And also I can share out. I'll share out also our IRGs. So So this is where we can also start using our brand strategy worksheet. Yeah, so here we are here. Oops. So in the brand strategy, we can kind of see, we start with a name. Why? Because when we're around the table, we're like, who are we marketing to? Are we marketing to Emily? Or are we marketing to Steve, right? It's like this idea that you want to have, like you want to say, are we marketing to the woman who wants exposure? Like, trying to say, so we create a label. That's why we put names on personas. And that way around the table, when we're doing strategies, things like that, we're kind of referring to an entire customer segmentation just by a label. So a lot of us will put that on there. So what we'll do is we'll put in the name, and then we'll start to fill out their demographics, right? How many kids does Emily have? Or you can kind of see now, you guys gotta say, okay, Rob, why do we play? Why do we pretend? Why do we do these play things? Just like, let's just start selling, right? I promise you, like, if you get in, and because by the way, like that's how I started. I'm like, no, let me just launch a company. And then I started to realize over the years, the more clarity that you have, the better your sales are going to be, the better your reach is going to be, the better your ultimate conversion is going to be. And so I do really believe in doing the planning ahead of time. So we'll kind of imagine what type of job she has. So we'll think through, is this a single mother, right? Right? Is this who's working? Is this a mother who is a homeschooler, right? Because it's going to change. Because if this is a homeschooler mom, then she's probably not going to be dropping her kid off. She's going to be with the kid, but maybe there's another thing she can do. She can go to a cooking class while the kid is in a little day camp.
I love that.
And so now all of a sudden, why is that interesting? Two things. One, we're not worried about transportation issues. We have really less worry about if something happens with a kid, the mom's there, versus if kids are being dropped off, there's a whole nother level that you have to deal with, right? So if we think through it like that, then we would actually want to be targeting moms who are going to be showing up with the kids. That means they probably are not working, or we're going to do this on a Sunday as an example. And so now we're starting looking at, okay, there are different types of personas that actually are more lucrative than others. Now, this isn't just about money. Yeah.
And also, what kind of environment do we want to create? And we want to create just another alternative where the mom can just drop the kids off and leave,
right?
Or we would want actually to try to restore that connection,
yes,
relationship, and actually vision of the family. That's important.
Right.
What kind of message are we actually conveying?
Exactly. So you nailed that one. And that's what actually takes us deeper, right? So again, we were kind of at the surface level. We're playing at the surface level, talking about some basic stuff. What do we want for the children? What do we want for the mom? Why do they want to do this? And now this concept of should we go deeper, right? Really thinking about what are their pains? What are the questions? What are the needs of this group? And I think this is super important as we start to go through this. Write out a list of different questions they're going to be having, and thoughts they're going to be having, and problems they're going to be going through, and also be thinking about who is that we're actually called to serve here. Because remember, this is a missional business, so we want to do something more than just we're just trying to have a commodity business where we have a bunch of kids that we're making money off of, right? And so I think in this, what we're going to start to do is we're going to start really going deeper into, who is the audience and where are they? And I think that's an important piece. An example of this, we could say, okay, does this mom have a Bible? Okay, are we targeting people that don't have a Bible? They have a Bible, they've read it, they understand it, right? They're applying it, right? You get this concept of where are they in their walk with Christ? Who do we actually want to target? And so we may say, okay, I want to target people who maybe have a Bible, but maybe haven't really explored it much, or people maybe even who, don't have a Bible yet. So there's this concept of you see where it gets so much deeper. And this is why we need a lot more clarity. But let's explain this journey. So let's explain through the journey and maybe get some more clarity on where they could be. Again, I don't want to overwhelm us here, but I want us to start expanding our minds, right? We've got, remember, we always go up the clouds, then we come back down again. So let's go up the clouds real quick. So where are they at? And ultimately, we can look at this like a ladder. And we want to start thinking about all of our customers on a ladder. Does that make sense? Because when we talked about, before we talked about commodity brands versus transformational brands, a commodity brand just goes from A to B. And with that, there's very little, really very little value that they're actually providing in that. But when we really understand what we're trying to move somebody across, whatever cavern there are, right? So we're gonna just do a quick refresher what we talked about before. So what we have here, we have the idea of there's different levels of brands. Remember that mom is in a current state and she identifies she has a problem. We need to list out what the problem. So I want you guys to just take a few minutes and just list out the problems you think that mom has.
That particular.
But yes, all through your own lenses. And then we're going to see if these merge together. Okay. So what are the problems they're facing? Remember, now what we're actually doing is the same exercise we were doing a second ago. We asked what is their motivation? So sometimes it's important that if we're looking at something, we're kind of stuck, like, I don't really know what their motivation is. Well, then think about what's their problem. It's this idea of we just take a cube, we look at other sides of the cube. And if you just keep looking at all the sides of the cube, eventually you start to see it in 3 dimensions. So we want to see the mom in 3 dimensions, get a sense on, what her motivation is. And by way of that, get a sense on what her problem is. You guys need to decide that. And each of you can have a different persona that you're working with, and we can then look at which one's strongest. So don't feel that you're limited to that. So for you, what do you feel like? Because I know you have a specific type of event you want to run. Right? So what is the problem that they're solving? So I want you guys to do this. You can give your persona its own name. Okay, so give your persona their own name. Identify their demographic information. That means, is this a single mom? Is this a stay-at-home mom? Are they homeschoolers? Okay. Looks like we have some questions in the chat. I'll answer while we're doing that. How do you transition away from your 9-to-5 job and build a self-supporting ministry simultaneously without it many years? Does this have to be on? I set up a live for Elaine and for everybody, and so we have others on the live. Because it does take time to build enough to replace your salary. I think the idea of transitioning from a 9-to-5 is really one of finding a problem that you want to solve. And then when you find that problem, start to solve that and start to, move where you're spending 20% of your time on that. And then eventually you'll invert it, or you're spending 80% in your other thing. Maybe you can transition out of that to a part-time role. We're going to be talking much more about this on a different call, but definitely keep coming back. I'll be putting more information out on that topic, Jonathan. So, persona name, demographics. The more you can imagine them, the realer they become. One of the things we can even do sometimes is even like imagine what their day looks like. They wake up, they've got a bunch of screaming kids. I don't know. I was still trauma from yesterday's birthday party. I'm joking. And you think about, okay, well, what are the problems they're solving? You think about where their kids are, the emotional, getting the psychographic pieces. She wants to be a really good mother. She sees that, if they're, maybe she sees that the education system's broken, she sees that maybe there's behavioral issues, she sees that there's a desire to bring them closer to Christ. Really think about what stage you want to reach them at. And that kind of goes back to, this idea here of thinking about the ladder. What stage is that mom at on the ladder? Think about those specific problems that they're facing right now.
Are we disregarding like the issues like single and
So each of us will create our own personas, and we're going to merge them together based on which is the strongest persona. If there's like commonality with the group, then we'll merge those. So feel free to identify any persona you want. And the demographics would be single, married, age, gender, financial status. Psychographics are maybe what she wants for her kids, the stage she's in. And I can put that list back up on up here. You can get into values. You can get into interests, beliefs, and lifestyles. Okay. If you want to, you can also be thinking about the user persona in addition to the buyer persona. And you can also be thinking about their kids. Do they have a special need? What age do we want to target? So we're going to be doing it's a little bit dual, right? Which normally we start with, we keep it easy with going straight to one, but since we're hitting parents, we have to do a little bit, think about the children as well. What is the ideal age for the child based on, right? First 6 to 8 years, they're most programmable, but also, other years, higher years, they're more able to do more activities. So what is based on the idea you had for the event, what is the ideal age that you'd like to attract? Let's do one more minute, and then we can always, like I said, this is to get our minds moving to understand the process. And then we will be able to dive in deeper. Again, we're thinking about both the buyer persona, which would be the parent, how to reach them. We're also looking for the user persona, which would be the child. We don't have to think as much about the motivation of the child because the mom will be providing the motivation, but we should be thinking about the needs of the child. Are there special needs, special considerations? What age? let's reinforce what this idea of a journey of needs. What I mean by that is, if we think about where they are now in their current state. So the mom says, I feel like my child needs more direction, engagement. Maybe it's a homeschooling mom, wants them to be with more children, other children. Maybe the idea is not social, it's the idea of spiritual. Maybe it's practical. We want them to learn how to do something with their hands. Maybe it's the environment. They just want their child to be outside the city to experience, right? Thinking through that. It's this idea that when we identify the problem, we can then see this idea that our solution is going to help them move from a current state to a resolved state. But I want to really reinforce this is that why we want to start thinking more holistically on this is because while our brand, right, that product, that event that we want to create, while that is the solution, if we really kind of put our mind around this, if all we're doing is just providing a one-off thing, like it's just like drop your kid off on a Tuesday kind of thing, then how that's a functional brand. And it serves for, a specific purpose, but it doesn't do much more than that. And so our idea is that if we were to think about this, when they start off with a problem, they're at a zero. They start off there at a zero, status quo. The mom is at a zero. She then identifies my child needs something, right? Or I want something for my child. She has a problem. She's now at a -1. She says, I want my child to be able to experience something. So we provide that experience. So that's a +1. But where it leaves them is right back to a zero. And what I mean by that is we don't elevate them more than just we want our kid to learn how to tie knots, we want our kid to be able to experience nature. That goes back from a status quo back to a status quo. And a lot of businesses don't recognize this. If we understand this one concept, we'll understand branding to a very large degree. This one concept will help us understand branding. And the idea that we don't want to take somebody from where they're at and leave them back to a status quo, even though we've solved their problem. And this is when we want to start thinking deeper. So we really want to go deeper than the core initial problem they had. The initial problem they had, the surface level problem, and we want to think about the core problem. And this idea of leaving them at an elevated state. And so we may think the parent may come in with a problem that, this is why I want to bring my kid here. But it's our job to then think about how can we actually leave them in an elevated state? How can we, and that's a lot of different ideas on how to do that. And that's this concept of moving from functional over to transformational. We talked about that briefly before. So what I mean by this and what's important about this is if we were to come back to this idea of a ladder, right? We want to think about that there are going to be different kids on different stages of this ladder. So the parent may be on a stage of the ladder, the child may be on a stage of the ladder, and we want to start thinking about from a spiritual perspective, from a missional perspective, how can we help progress them? And so I think there's two axes that I came up with previously. One is how much light they've received. And this is this idea of, are they in an atheist home? Are they in a Christian home? Are they in an Adventist home? And the idea of how much light do they understand? Now, these may be Adventists that just don't understand, maybe country living, don't understand the health message. And that would be the next, which is this idea of light applied. So there's light received from partial light to full light, and then there's light applied. So are they living up to the light that they're given is the next question. And what we're able to see from this is this idea that we can start putting them into some additional quadrants where we say, okay, even though our persona is this type of mother, we then have a sub-personas and say, these parents maybe are not familiar with health. These parents, the same persona could be on a different stage of the ladder. And so I kind of put some labels on these. But ultimately what we find is that there's a ladder even within inside of our personas. And so our goal then is to figure out how can we bring them to Christ. So how can we use this? In teaching health reform, as in all gospel work, we need to meet the people where they are. We are not at liberty to prevent the most advanced propositions. And so in this, we're now also doing this sub work. See how it gets more complicated? But let's not get too confused by this, but understand that our goal here is to be able to reach people where they are at the stage they are. And that's why it's important to understand where they're at with this. And sometimes we may even segment these up. We may even have one program that's targeting children from atheist homes or unbeliever homes. We could have another program that's for those that are maybe in the faith but are not familiar with a health message, right? And so this is where we start to, again, thinking about sub-segmenting. I don't want to overcomplicate this, but it is super important to understand that there may be more segmentation in order to understand. If we have, as an example, if we say, maybe Danny says, I want to bring kids out that have never experienced nature before and just show them a better way. Or maybe they're kind of troubled youth, as an example. And then another one's like, I want my children to be around other believers in nature that are better influences on them. In which case, it actually ended up being two different programs. You see why? And so again, this is where we have to start really being clear, because if we're not intentional, what you get is a bunch of people mixed in the same pot, and they actually, one may unleaven the other. So again, it's really important to think about, are there different steps on the ladder, even in our program? Are we having different programs that have different purposes? Now, our brains may be frying at this point because there's a lot of different personas now. So what we can see is even in the same demographic persona, even with the same psychographic persona, there are different levels. And that's why missional entrepreneurship is even one, it's one extra axis that most businesses don't even have to deal with. But we have God that's going to help us through this stuff. So I just want to be thinking through that, this idea that, there are different steps on the ladder. And this moves us into this idea of quadrants. But actually, let me bring one other thing up first. We could think about also, and so I started to define, because I'm a taxonomist, this is what I like to do, everything has to have a box. So what I started to do is define the various different levels that somebody could be at, and then being able to use that to kind of put people in boxes. So you could say, what is the minimum, that we want? So here, let's say we're going to be serving just, vegan diets as an example. And this was actually, I did this for a homestead, for an outpost, right? But we can kind of see how this can apply when we understand our target audience. Like what is our ideal that we're trying to attract somebody into? And so this kind of goes for everything from what we consume with our mouths to what we consume with our ears, our eyes, and so this kind of this idea of, really even in a knowledge or a relationship with Christ. So it gets really, really in depth that we can do this. And the idea also is that this helps, and they're not always have to be across one line. One could be here, one could be there, one could be there, one there. We just have to kind of figure out what's the minimum standard we want for the program, for that stage, and then how we want to path that. So when we start to look through this idea of the different ladders and the different quadrants, right? We talked about this idea of light applied, light received. What's interesting with that is we kind of have, four main personas. We can then just determine which of these are right for our demographic. How do we reach those that have never heard, that are asleep and never heard the light? How do we reach those who maybe have the full light but are asleep? How do we reach those that may be awake of all the light that they're given, they're following, but maybe they just haven't received all the light yet? And then how do we, collaborate with those who have the full light and are awake? So again, we start kind of moving through that. Does that start to kind of maybe put things in boxes a little bit for us? And then in that, our idea is that we want to path through that. And so I don't want to add too much more, but I want to stretch our brains a little bit further to also think about how we integrate in with the network, right? And so now we're thinking not just the people we're bringing in, the ladder we're putting them on, we're actually also thinking about the network that they will be a part of. And so when we think about what is the network, right? We have, paradise, a place of hope and wholeness, right? And so that becomes the surrounding, that's the donut, so to speak. That's the surrounding circle. And, there's a lot of different types of people that are coming through the clinic and coming through the fields, and understanding that inside of those, like, there's not only are those being reached through the clinic, but also how can our programs also supplement that effort? And so almost thinking about our ladder going through the clinic. Do we kind of get what I'm saying here? So this idea of like, how can our program bring value to the clinic, to fields? And so while we want to think about us as financially, separate in the sense that we want to be entrepreneurs, we want to be independent, we also have to understand how do we integrate in and what are the needs of the clinic, right? And so we start seeing these very three-dimensional and almost four-dimensional at times views. And so we're taking people we're pathing them up through, who maybe they're seekers, maybe they're, watchmen, or maybe they're light bearers, as we're kind of bringing them up through the clinic. And that's also our employees, ourselves, right? So we're on the blue ladder. Whatever employees we're going to staff to help run these programs will be on the blue ladder. And so that's this concept of really thinking through the various different programs, right? So taking some with, bringing people maybe even from the program onto our ladder, and activating them into helping with some of these programs, whether that's whichever one that's coming through, getting them onto the ladder. And I think there's a piece that I want to just reinforce is, there's a lot of thought on how do we make people healthy, right? But we also want to remember that they can be healthy dead people. And so we also want to help them understand the gospel message, understand that they can have eternal life. And that is where we can look at this concept of, are they healthy and lost, or are they healthy and found? And you see how that ladder moves up to that top quadrant. So our job and our goal is to continue to progress them, move them up the quadrant, right? Move them from being sick and lost to being sick and found, and then being sick and healthy. And that's through remedies, healthy and found. What did I say? Sick and healthy? No, that's an oxymoron, obviously. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's this concept here. So we're going to want to think about a framework. Now, this is where it gets, again, I'm going to kind of I'm going to move us ahead a little bit, and then we're going to come back and we'll do some more exercise work while we can continue to write things down. We want to think about what our framework is. Now, a framework means it's a replicable way we handle things. It's a protocol. It's an SOP, right? Standard operating procedures, right? It's a framework. It's a protocol. And we want to think about how do we handle different situations in a way that we've thought about them before. So what happens if there's an incident? What happens if, right? So we're starting to think about these things. And as we're thinking about those, we may say, okay, well, that's a lot of risk. And now we may want to mitigate our risk by saying we're not going to take that persona on right now because it's just not the right time yet, right? If we're bringing somebody that maybe has, maybe they came through a system, they have anger management issues coming out of a certain program, right? And it's like, okay, maybe we pause on that until we have more infrastructure for that. Maybe it's, we don't want to take children that have this specific need just yet because we're not staffed for that, right? So this idea also of thinking of what is the framework, how are we looking at this? And ultimately, we want to try and create really standardized ways, actionable ways that we can train on this. So what's interesting is, these, we can think of, let's think of New Start, right? New Start, nutrition, exercise, NEW, right? Water, right? What's really, can be really powerful is if we create our own frameworks with our own, kind of our name for our framework. Right? So this is this concept of, if there's something we've figured out, if we have a better system, if we have a better way to do it, we can actually develop this. Now, what this does, this starts to create authority, right? So all of a sudden, now they're going to say, oh, you've heard of Weimar and the New Start. Well, Well, you've heard of paradise, and they're, Chris or no, anyway.
Creator.
No, that's creation.
Oh, creation.
That's creation health.
Oh yeah, creation health. All right. So that's the idea, right? So I probably just didn't type it all in. And I think we're doing it as an exercise.
It's creation, right?
It's creation.
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh, the R.
it's
The R threw me
special.
off.
It's one.
The R threw me off. Okay. So the point is this: you see how we have this? So we can say something that is something that feels part of our ethos. It feels part of our values, our mission. We can create that into a word, and that becomes a framework for like how we progress people or our core values. So these can be kind of parallel, or they can be linear in that. But ultimately, we want to create our steps. Okay, so I'm going to move past some of this here. I do want to point one thing out. Those that are in the circle, right? That's who we're trying to save. Those on the ladder, if we're now thinking about a ladder of, these are employees, these are things, right? Those are the ones that we want to see, how can we use that group to vindicate the Father? And so it's always this idea of, as he says, all should strive to be part of the 144,000 and help others gain access to heaven, right? So when we're thinking about this program, think, who is going to be on the ladder? Like how can we bring people into striving to be part of the 144,000? How can we support that desire? And then how can we also help others gain access to heaven? Because remember, God's purpose in giving three angels a message is to prepare people to stand through investigative judgment. Right? It's not just helping sick people be saved as well. It's also how do we prepare the 144,000, and we must be more intelligent in this work. Okay, so how are we doing on our spreadsheets? How are we doing with our spreadsheets? Before we talk about persona journey, let's talk about our spreadsheet, our worksheet. Our worksheet.
I was like, ooh, I missed something.
Okay, how's it going on the worksheet? So do we want to start sharing what some of our personas look like, and we can maybe start putting those together into maybe a kind of a master worksheet or spreadsheet worksheet?
Follow every step in order.
Okay, it's all right. Let's see what we got.
But this is Dave and Kathy.
Dave and Kathy, all right.
They're Jewish family.
All right.
Affluent with 4 boys.
Okay.
The mother wants to make more connection with her children and activities.
Okay.
So the father is a lawyer. These are my neighbors.
And it's okay. It's okay to picture somebody that exists. You then just want to double check that against, is this, Bob and Kathy are the only people that, is Bob and Kathy's needs very, very similar to others, or is it unique? And so it's no problem using somebody that just make sure that it becomes general enough that there's enough of a market for them. And it sounds like it is so far, other than maybe the Jewish thing. Yeah.
The father's a lawyer, but he's into tradition. Wants the boys to get more active in recreational stuff, but doesn't really have time. They try to hire a nanny.
Okay.
Worked out.
Okay.
And so they're looking for just a summer program. And so some of the things that they want from the program is activities that can connect them spiritually to things. They want to be musical, they want to be traditional, well-rounded, but really focusing on helping them to be active in responsibilities, chores, things like that.
Okay, so activating the children's sense of responsibility.
Yeah, sense of responsibility.
Yep.
The children are active, they're malleable, they're inquisitive, they're prompt to help. But it seems like when dad is not around, it just doesn't work. And so it's 6, 8, 10, and 12. And one of them is what we would call the problem child.
Okay.
Who seems to not always want to listen, but yet they're not out loud about it.
Is that the middle child? Which one do you have identified as a problem child?
12-year-old.
Okay.
And so that's their current state. So I forgot the parents want accountability and professionalism.
Okay.
That's why I didn't work out with the nanny.
Makes sense.
Okay, so resolve state. Well, I wasn't sure, what they would look like if they had the program. That's what you're saying? Okay, I was trying to figure that out, so I didn't have, but I just got it when I talked to you about it. So anyway, the children need freedom to explore new things, freedom to ask questions, freedom to experience,
Individuality, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to build trust with the experience. So, mom tells her to do something, they don't think mom's right, so they just kind of do it okay, type thing. And implementing domestic skills, right?
Okay.
What that looks like. That's what I got, but I didn't realize the resolve state what that would look like to me.
So you're already doing next level. So that's really good. I would say the resolve state would be, what does the child behavior look like after the program, and how does that reflect in the family life? Are they then also encouraging their parents? Let's remind us to study the Bible today. Let's sing a song about Jesus, right? Like, so thinking about what are some ways the children can then influence the parents to just bring Christ into their lives. By the way, super good. I was super impressed with Sade yesterday. Like, legit, like I'd hire her as like as a coordinator in my agency for sure. Yeah. She has a gift for marketing already. So, who else has their personas? And as we're doing this, think about the common traits. So what I want you guys to do is, when Sade is talking about her traits, maybe write some little asterisks or kind of little tick mark or circle, whatever you want to do, your traits, and I want to figure out what's common, right? So she, when she's talking about the ages, the number of kids, whatever is common with your persona and her persona, let's go ahead and indicate that. That way we're able then to start to kind of think about, is there an overlap? Is there a master persona that emerges?
You said common traits from the children, from each one?
So when they start speaking on theirs,
Yeah.
I want you to highlight yours. And if we can remember what Sade said, let's go ahead and initial or kind of indicate, little asterisk, little tick mark, something on our personas that show common traits. Who wants to go next?
I can go.
Yep.
So my persona, name's Anna. Husband's Dave. Anna's a marketing specialist, and Dave is a chemistry professor. They're married, and he's non-believing. She's Christian.
Okay.
She's not Seventh-day Adventist. He
Yep.
doesn't believe, but he's okay with her, doing these things. He sees it more like a hobby,
Yeah.
like a spiritual thing. They both live in the city. She's 35. He is 40.
Mm-hmm.
She has a Bible, but she seldom studies. She's interested in it though.
Mm-hmm.
And she has two kids. One is a 9-year-old girl who shares interest with her mother in Bible stories, and she's still very young, getting kind of new to it. And the other is a 14-year-old boy who's relatively uninterested. And I'd say the relationship between the siblings is the younger sibling, the daughter, 9-year-old daughter, she looks up to her brother a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So his interest and disinterest and his involvements, things really have an impression on her.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy has a very deep desire to protect his sister.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to see her thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So, if she's happy with her Bible stories, he tries to, supports that. But if he sees like religion being something that's more restrictive for her, his idea is like, I'm protecting my sister.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll kind of incentivize her to pull
Sure.
back from that. And I guess one of the questions I had is, I don't know if this is okay to say.
Yeah.
Is like, since the leader of the home, the father is not at enmity with what the mother's doing, but he's not interested, and they live in the city. I'm just thinking, like, what are some ways to help address or try to mitigate or block those influences in a way without feeling like you're trying to drive a wedge through the family? Because the father has his voice, and regardless of whether he's a believer, still in the household. So
Yep.
we have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out ways that the age gap, if there's an issue, and how you can use the brother-sister relationship. The son can protect the sister can look up to the brother and try to use their relationship with each other, like a positive feedback loop to bring them together. And then it won't be split 50-50, daughter and mother on one side and the son and father on the other. And you can maybe have the children and the mother. The father maybe sees some of the incentive, like how it's maybe strengthening the relationship between his children, and maybe try to inspire interest there. That was it.
Okay, so what we're seeing there is a lot on the missional side, right? The idea of how the children influence parents, or how a child influences another child, positive or negative, and then how a believing parent maybe influences non-believing parent. Super important. So I think that is going to be stuff that would be part of our framework. So we're thinking about that would be kind of like in our secondary framework when we're saying, okay, what I also want us to be thinking about is specifically in the product, let's expand it even further. So really awesome, by the way. I like the detail. I like the nuances. I love the, exploring the various different, dynamics within the family unit. What I would also think about is, what are they getting out of the experience? So start shedding some light on what you think the experience should be, what traits, what outcome you want for that experience. And then that'll help us start to uncover what the program should look like, right? Is this a hands-on program? Is this a, educational? Is it the parents and the child together? It's the parents on one and the child on another program. Like really kind of thinking through, what is the product, this service? What does the product look like? So let's take that even further. Really good, man. Really, really good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Who's next?
I have a question. Is
Yes.
it specifically to do with a specific venture? Or this is the person?
We're exploring. Yeah. So what we're doing right now is we're exploring the different opportunities. So there was a lot of ideas that we kind of put together in terms of what we could be working on, what we could focus on. And so we wanted to show the most common one would be an event. So we're choosing an event, and now we're thinking about the different potential actors, the different personas that would be involved in that event. So some of these are going to be, we had some examples of, some elderly, some children. So we said, okay, let's start narrowing our focus into a particular persona. And we identified that it would be parents bringing their children. And because of that, now, while the user persona will be the child, and that's what we have to explore more, I think we can do some more fleshing out of what that experience looks like. Is this a day camp? Is it an afternoon session? Is it, moms are doing, painting, and the children are doing, slave labor in the garden, whatever the event, whatever the program looks like. Are they doing things together where it's like bonding experience, or doing things separate, where the mom just has a chance to get away for a little bit, right? That's when we're thinking about what the mom has in their mind, right? Is a mom looking for this to be an opportunity to bond further with her children? Or is the mom looking for just a little bit of breathing room for an hour a week, or, 5 hours a week, or, in a day kind of thing? So that's what we're trying to explore. By doing this, we're going to be able to bring together the various different ideas that the group has had for forming a missional business inside of Paradise.
Okay, so because the person is supposed to fit within that idea.
So we've kind of decided on a mother and a child, but that's not limiting any of us to that.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I can say my person, but it's not.
You can absolutely do yours. And by the way, yours could also be the mother in a different event than the child. So you can say, okay, look, I'm only interested, mine is really only interested in the mother. And then, we could have Maddie that says, I'm only interested in the child. But those are actually the same idea. It's just they're two different events occurring simultaneously, where one you're focused on the child and she's focused on the mother. And that's this concept of thinking through what these ideas. So this is a brainstorming session, right? Where there's an ideation session. There's no wrong answers. We're just trying to flesh stuff out. Why? We want to crystallize in our mind what the idea, what the potential, what the opportunity could be. Because there's also a group dynamic. We also want to figure out how do they overlap? Because if there's a good overlap, that starts to, it starts to naturally gel. Versus one person saying, I want to do, things for elders, and a person says, I want to do things for kids. And then it feels like we're all going in different directions. What the hope would be is we can come together. But again, in this offering, it can be a mother could go to a class with single mom, like single parents, not even single parents, just like single people, right? Like no kids, right? Because that could be, as an example, I'm gonna go back to the Sing Freedom, right? Like the mom and just other random people could come together in the Sing Freedom, and Maddie has a program for the kids. So it doesn't have, you're not just targeting mothers in Sing Freedom, you're targeting females 24 to 48, whatever it is. And it just so happens that's what I'm saying. We want to circle, that's what I want to indicate on our list as we start reading through the demographic psychographics of your persona versus their persona. We want to indicate if it's common, because we may find out that, you know, your idea is exactly the same target persona as the mother of her idea. And then that way it makes really a lot of sense. And we can start merging these together.
Okay, I can say mine, which is mainly in line with what I was thinking about in-home, the consultations, whatever I said.
Yep.
Okay, but, I mean, anyway, this is a real thing that happened, and then that's why I started to think about it more. So this is the person.
Yeah. Okay,
who
so,
I think identifies the type of person that
okay,
is my target audience.
okay. Do you want to share those?
Yeah, it's a 52-year-old woman.
Okay. And again, with that, if that fits your demographic, go ahead and indicate that, just a little check mark, right? And if the more check marks we get, right, then the more common it is. Fair enough? Okay, so continue.
52-year-old woman, divorced, with 2 teenage girls, age 18 and 14. The older girl is autistic and makes living harder for the younger girl who just wants to be free. They're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and the mother barely has enough income to make ends meet. She works 2 jobs, and also has to take her older daughter everywhere because her daughter can't drive and has all these different appointments. The mother has a host of illnesses, including thyroid problems, which is causing her to gain weight, and she's really self-conscious about that.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes to the farm because she's trying to get on a healthier program, so eat
Okay.
healthy, get organic food, but doesn't actually have enough finances to maintain that lifestyle, but know that she needs it. She needs emotional support, health advice, and really wants actual time away from her hectic schedule and being tied to her daughters and living that constraints.
And so to summarize that, you're saying that in your persona, is the mom then housebound? Is that what I understand?
No, she works 2 jobs.
Okay. Is she coming to the location, or are you going to her? Because I know one of the ideas that you had was for in-home counseling, in-home care. Does that fit? Is that what you're looking for here, or is this more along the lines of what?
Yeah, in my mind, in that situation, there's a few different ways that we can help her. We could go to her for the in-home counseling thing. She could come for assistance in how, like, you know, if we're putting on seminars, events,
Yep.
classes on how to live healthier, how to do it within a budget, and her older daughter also could benefit from green therapy because she's in need of things just to help her mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we're doing this, we can start thinking of this idea of, you know, in this, is this an on-site? Is this off-site? And then we can even think about, can we reach people, you know, off-premise and then bring them on-premise? So it's this idea of like, and we're going to talk about that in a second, which is this idea of a journey. But let's go through everybody, and then we'll talk about the idea of a journey. Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to share theirs? Yes.
Kelly, she's 36 years old,
Okay.
and she's married to John, who works a 9-to-5 job.
Okay.
And they have 2 kids, 1 boy and girl, 8 and 5.
Okay.
And she works a part-time job twice by 2 mornings a week to help get the kids out. They live in a small town apartment, and they have married issues. And she's looking for somewhere trustworthy to leave their kids when she goes out to work 2 mornings a week.
Mhm.
She wants them to have more outdoor time and be acquainted with nature, fresh air, and like have more physical activity.
Mhm.
She wants it to be peaceful and calm because they don't get that much at home. And she's interested in a different learning experience out of in school because her boy is getting bullied and learning a bunch of them.
Mhm.
And plus all his creativity and doesn't want the girl to go through the same experience.
Nice. So almost we're now thinking of another axis, which is, are they dropping this? Are they dropping? So is the buyer, the parent, dropping their kids off or joining them, right? So again, I want you guys to start training your brains. I promise you, if you guys start training your brains to do axis work, like axis work like this, like you guys see how useful it is, right? So just, it's really important for me as we start thinking through this, think about what are the extremes? Because this is how we create really good personas, is we start thinking about, are they dropping someone off? Are they joining them, right? We had the other one that was, is it on premise? Is it off premise? And what you're able to start to do is then join those two axes together. If you have two really strong axes, you can join them together and figure out, you know, how these work. These two don't go together, but in many instances, axes don't. Yeah, like I said, just start thinking through that idea of, you know, where are they on the spectrum? Where are they on an axis? All right, let's continue. Very good stuff, by the way.
Okay.
My persona.
Yeah.
I was focusing on the woman.
Yep.
Her name is Angela.
Yep.
Also 36.
All right.
She's married. She has no income, but her husband has a job, so they're like upper middle class.
Mhm.
That's being destroyed, right? She also has 2 kids, 10-year-old boy, 15-year-old girl. She wants to be more connected with her kids. They're not homeschooled. Her son has ADHD and like phone and video game addiction. Thirst tantrums. Her daughter is distant and secretive. Husband is a workaholic, emotionally detached, and they're both Catholic, but he's irreligious. He's kind, but he's closed off. She grew up Catholic, doesn't go to church often. She likes to read devotionals and like watch prosperity preachers. She's very interested. Schooling. She has outside pressure from like extended family for kids to excel.
Okay.
But she's also interested in homeschooling. She doesn't know how to go about it. She's very interested in health and wanting to have a healthy diet. She loves the premise of Paradise Fields and nutrient-dense food. She's shopped there a few times. She's trying like yoga and sometimes goes to the gym, but it's like inconsistent. And she also deals with depression and doesn't have bandwidth to like really spend time and be with her kids. She wants her family to be more unified. She wants her husband to be involved with her kids' interests and development, and also to be interested in her own health and the health of the family as a whole. She wants to connect with her daughter better and have open conversation, since she's secretive and stuff. And she wants to understand how to work with her overactive son and how to get him to interact with the real world. So I figured the program would seek to get parents and children to interact with each other, be 95% in nature, and help them learn about and use practical skills like gardening, cooking. I thought like guided community outreach, which like an example would be like maybe pick and create flower arrangements and then take them to like a nearby nursing home to teach kids how to care about old people.
Nice.
Building crafts and structures, plant identification, and maybe like habitat construction management, like the soils and whatnot.
Yeah.
No lectures at all. And
I can see Keith's like, I'm over this stuff already, dude.
And facilitators openly but tactfully integrate spiritual lessons throughout the day.
Okay. So you guys are really more detailed than I usually get. This is fantastic, by the way. Really fantastic, really hard, really intuitive stuff. And so I kind of saw one more. You mentioned this would be probably more of an after-school program because the kids are in school. Maddie's is more of, I understand, more like a daycare or, you know, some of this there. So this concept of we start to see maybe a new axis formed. Are they dropping them off after school? Are they dropping them off at the daycare? Are they, joining them after school, joining them for a day program? And you can also say, okay, this could be something a parent could do. This would be the painting thing. This would be, so you start to see how you'd have these different quadrants would be formed. Does this kind of resonate a little bit of how we could see this? So this would be kind of like a drop-off daycare. Right? That's just like kind of like a normal daycare kind of thing, right? And then an after school for parent. I mean, this could now be two things. One could be, parents, like a woman's night out thing, whatever it is, whatever the concept. I have to go back to the other screen. The Sing thing, right? The Sing Freedom program, right? That would be just like, so essentially it's something that is parents only, and then another program that could also be, using the same axes, another program that could also be parent and child, right, together, right? So we can start seeing there's two different ones that could happen in this axis. If they are after school with drop off, it could also be then obviously child only, right? So this would be afternoon, afternoon events, right? And so you start to kind of like see how you can start putting these things in quadrants of thinking like what the different relative relationship is. So if they're dropping them off after school, I'm sure there's names for this stuff. After class, after school program, right? Right. And then if there's over here on the other side, it could be, there's two different programs that are possible. And if they join during the day, that would probably be some sort of true education experience where they're actually coming and helping with the farm, right? Some sort of true education outing where they're actually like a hands-on, workshop, homeschooling, opportunity, et cetera. So you start to see how these start to form. What I want us to do is now look through our persona and which one is our persona in. So thinking through our personas, what does our idea fall under? Does it fall under one of these categories, or is there new categories that are not identified? So Danella, yours would be after school. And again, this could even be, not even have to be join, right? It could also just be solo, right? Join or solo. So now we can kind of split this for the mom. Yeah, because it doesn't have to be a mom, right? Because my point is like you could actually fit something here where it's not a parent at all. It's just a women's night, or an event, meetup, whatever it would be. So you start seeing how, but if we can kind of box these things in, what we're able to do is figure out how can we maximize this opportunity? Because if the mom's coming, if the kid's coming, can we also engage the mom? If the mom's coming, can we also play the space for their kids? And that's how we increase revenue, right? One thing I always think about is marketing, right? So customer acquisition is the most expensive cost. So if you're thinking about how do I get a customer in, that's the most expensive thing. So if you have a customer coming in and they can bring with them other customers, now you're decreasing your customer acquisition cost, which increases your profits. Right? So again, that's just like a worldly focus. From a spiritual focus, the more people we can bring out and be able to put in a godlike environment, Christ-like environment, the better. So again, missional as well as business, both of those has good logic on that. Thoughts so far?
Yeah, the daycare drop-off is not necessarily all day, right? So I guess that can include.
Right. So now you can even split this into, a full day care or just a specific program.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, then I think.
Yeah.
Everything that's in my mind.
Okay. Now, again, what's this useful for? It's useful for structuring our brains. This is how we want to start thinking, putting things in boundaries, putting things with axes, start thinking about the relationship between them. Now, in this instance, I don't really see much of a persona journey, but I want to talk about persona journeys. So when we think of, let's look through this. So in this instance here, I'm gonna revise this a little bit just so we can make a persona journey out of it. So in this instance here, the mom has kids. So it's essentially kids in school, right? In like a public school, whatever. Okay. In this instance, so this both of these would be the kid would be in school. In this instance here, daycare and so in this instance here, they would be more hands-on with the kids. So this could be homeschooling, right? Having events, having meetups, and then this one up. So ultimately, what I'm trying to get at here is, what if there was an opportunity for us to help kids that are in school reach the parents and give them homeschooling resources? Do you see how that starts to form a persona journey, where we're actually trying to move the parent from having kids in in child abuse, in a public school, and then moving them over into homeschooling environments. So then what we want to think about is, what's the catalyst for that? And so we may want to reach some of the parents who we identify as homeschooling and present them with an opportunity for they can make a decision for themselves on what's right for their child. And so this could even be like homeschooling, you could have like an open day, or you could have some handouts, right? There's different mediums, but have some sort of curriculum, have some sort of pitch of homeschool awareness. And if we can provide awareness to the mom, to the parent, about that homeschool even exists, what's interesting is a lot of people sometimes don't even know what the possibilities are. And so that's, again, see what we're doing? We're really refining this idea that the people we're reaching, the mothers, who even if they're dropping their kid off at school, in the afternoon program as an example, right? So in this instance, if they're dropping their kid off at school, we could hand them a little flyer as they come through about the importance of homeschooling, or we can invite them in for a day to actually watch and be part of a homeschooling group and see how other moms and parents are doing that, even have questions and answers. Again, I always use the format of make it approachable, make it actionable, and then make it sustainable. So how do we make homeschooling approachable for kids whose parents are that? Yeah, whoever first. No.
Where do seasonal events fit in? Like if we were going to do something just for summer because the kids are out of school then, or just for spring break, or just for how do we fit that in?
All right, so we just make new axes. Again, it's just a matter of making new axes. Like, we're not ever bound to an axis, right? We just make new axes. So now we have new ones: seasonal versus regular. All right, and then we can say, okay, which axes do I want to bring over? Drop off and solo, after school daycare. So I can say, is this a seasonal one that you drop off, or a seasonal one you join? We can even figure out what another axis that would work from this. Yes. Make it approachable, make it actionable, and then sustainable. Okay, so ultimately what we've got here is I want to just recap on this. Our goal from this is to just get a better understanding of who we want to serve. So that's the parents. There's the children by way of the parents, is what I see kind of being an overlap. Then thinking through what is what's the traits, right? What's the problem that we want to solve? So that's the second piece. So 1, who do we want to serve? Okay, we're recapping again. Who do we want to serve is 1. 2, what's the problem that we want to solve? 3, what's the vehicle to solve that problem? How are we going to solve the problem? Yes.
Can it be, what's the problem you want to solve first, and then from there
You always start with the who. I know the world. It's this idea of like Simon Sinek and everybody always starts with start with your why. Our why is baked in, so we start with our who. Yeah, and once we know the who, then we figure out what's the problem for that person. Because we say, I want to solve, a world hunger. It's like, okay, yes, but who? Does that mean somebody who is on a fixed income, who's meal insecurity, or are we talking like the genocide happening in Gaza right now? Trying to say, understanding the who first gives a lot more clarity. But if for your own ideation, you can start anywhere you want. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Any questions so far on this? All right.
So who, what, how?
Yes. So let's finish up with this last concept, and then we'll just go into individual time to explore further. And this idea of persona journey. So what we want to do is we want to think about how can I move someone through a journey, through an axis. So in this instance here, I have just an example one. We have, are they productive or unproductive? Do they have a temporal job, or do they have a sustainable ministry? Are they satisfied, or are they feeling fulfilled? Okay, so I've already kind of preset, just for the sake of this, I've just kind of preset a journey for us. And the idea is that we want to take them from one quadrant, move them across the quadrants. And so it's this idea we always want to think about, how do we move them through different quadrants? And this can become much more, far more complicated when we start thinking about, and this is what we want to eventually get to is, what is our framework? What is our formula? So this is something that I did with a mentee recently. So I just kind of had it fresh. So we did this, is this idea of, we want to find people who are maybe out of alignment. We want to help them be connected with God, help them redefine what success looks like. That's by spending time with God. That's identifying purpose. We then move them into helping them be more motivated, helping them be more productive, and then ultimately move them into how do we help them be satisfied and fulfilled, right? And so that's this concept of not only thinking about like one product. So how would this work? We could say we're going to target parents, right, that have kids in, homeschooling or not, whatever it is. We want to help those parents understand homeschooling. Maybe that would be part of our persona journey. So we take a mom who has no idea about homeschooling, also has no idea about nutrition, and we want to help them, one, understand homeschooling, two, understand the importance of nutrition. Then, once we got them there, we would then want to help them understand the importance of nutrition as it relates to having our bodies are temples, right? We then want to also help them, so we've got them into understanding the importance of homeschooling. Now we want to move from homeschooling into understanding why we homeschool. What is true education? So it's this idea of how do we take them from where they are and where we want them to be. And sometimes we have to move them through different quadrants to do that. Yeah. And that's what I really want us to be focusing on is where are they, right? Where we find them, where do we focus on them, right? And then where do we help guide them to? Right? Does that kind of resonate? Okay, so it's a lot of the stuff. We will have some time now just to kind of break through it. I don't think Elaine's on anymore, so I'll go ahead and power off the live stream. But the idea for this is let's continue this with working through each of our quadrants. So that looks like